Welcome to God and Autobiography, the podcast. I'm Scott Langdon, and today Jerry has a fantastic conversation with Hans Legrand, author of the book Life-Seeking Understanding: How Spiritual but Not Religious and Other Seekers Can Construct Their Own Theology. Initially a solid-state physicist specializing in superconducting X-ray detectors for astronomical satellites, Hans later pursued a PhD in theology while caring for his father and exploring religious liberalism. Hans' spiritual story and his work are both fascinating and very compelling in today's world, where so many people are seeking but without a traditional framework. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Well, thank you, Hans, for agreeing to come on and talk about your spiritual story. As I was just saying to you, and as I often say to people, everyone has a spiritual story, and I find them just fascinating because, what could be more important than this, your own journal with ultimate questions, with the meaning of things, if we consider that to be what, in some sense, religion, spirituality is about. And everybody starts somewhere. And first, I'd just be interested in knowing, you might say, the context of your own earliest reflections on things was in terms of the spiritual picture, complexity of your life and community, your family. Where did you begin in those terms? Was there a religion present? Was there a dominant religion? Was there dominant secularity, or anti-religion? How would you characterize that?
Thanks for having me, Jerry. So it'll be fun to talk about this. I can actually start about 200 years ago, I guess, because I have many ministers among my ancestors, and one of them actually lived in the 19th century. He wrote a book about how everything changed during his age, and especially also how the church changed. And of course, that in the 19th century, that was quite a bit. Modernity setting in, and he was quite a prominent modernist minister. So in the heydays of religious liberalism, I would say.
And also after that, what would be the name of his denomination?
He was a mainstream Protestant. But of course, in the mainstream Protestant church in the Netherlands, which is Calvinist, already at that time, it was varying from very orthodox to very liberal.
Okay, and he was a modernist.
Yeah, he was a modernist.
In that environment.
He was a little bit earlier than a modernist, I would say. But in that time, you had the Groninger theologians, which was the Groningen University. That was where it happened in the 19th century. And he studied there. And after he finished his studies and became a minister, he regularly went to Groningen to see the other Groninger theologians and publish together with them and about them, etc., etc. So that was and it was a very fascinating figure because I felt, I also wrote about religion in my time and what is relevant for religion in my time. So he is a kind of, I think I would have liked the guy very much.
Yes.
It's kind of, it's a kind of a mirror. It makes you feel rooted if you're an ancestor like that.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
But that being said, the religious part skipped 1 or 2 generations. So my father was an atheist. He didn't like religion at all. And my mother was a nominal member of the church, but for many, many, many years, she didn't do anything about religion. So during my upbringing, it was kind of, I got the children Bible as a present because that was an important part of culture, to be a little bit aware of that. and once a year, or maybe every 2 years, we went to the Bach Matthias Passion. But that was the religious part of my upbringing, basically. And when it started, when my first girlfriend, she was from a conservative Roman Catholic background, which taught me basically two things. I'm missing something, and this is not what I'm missing. So I started to look around for a more liberal church, and that was when I was about 20 or so, and I ended up in the Remonstrant church a couple of years later, which is a liberal Dutch denomination, a bit of universalist in character. And that's why I liked it so much that 1 year later I was studying theology.
Okay.
I was ready with my master's in physics.
Excuse me, Hans, but what was drawing you in that direction? You grew up in a home with an atheist father and a nominally Christian mother, but not a big presence in your family environment. And why did you have this something drawing you toward the study of religion, the study of theology?
Yeah, I think I saw my girlfriend and my girlfriend parents and saw how important and valuable their religion was to them.
Yes.
And on the other hand, it was because I was not a Catholic, I was not welcome in that social environment.
Right.
And I felt, well, there should be a religion which is much more welcome and open, and but what that still gives the roots and the reflections and the meaning in life, and that I was missing from my family background, basically.
So it provided some sense of, would this be accurate? You tell me if I've got it right or wrong. Some sense of meaning in life, and a meaning that could, you might say, suffuse, is that the verb I want, a family, could provide the ethos that an environment, a healthy, meaningful environment for a family or I suppose other group. But you're seeing it, she had a family all living within this Catholic frame. And there was something very healthy about that, even though it
absolutely
wasn't your frame.
Exactly.
And so you started taking a serious interest in studying it, being this kind of person.
The first step was that I went to the bookshop to see if I could find a book which made sense.
Yes.
And there I found there a book which was basically describing all the denominations, the Christian denominations in the Netherlands.
Oh, okay.
So I read that book and picked basically the one that offered the most freedom.
Okay.
Yes. And that was the Remonstrants.
So you were really looking, it's interesting, it's part of what the word liberal means, of course, is liberty. And you're really looking for something that did not barricade thought, you know, within certain confines.
Yeah, which stimulated thought, but not confined thought. That was what I was looking for.
Yes. And where did you start to find that? This book told you about them all, and so
so I picked the most liberal one, and I went to the church, which in the town I was living in had one of those churches, and it was immediately I felt very much at home. I thought, well, at least for that moment, for that period, I felt very much at home. 1 year later, when I was finished with my my master's in physics, I decided, well, I'm going for a PhD in physics, but at the same time, in the evening hours, go for an MDiv.
Yeah,
and that's what I did. So it was extremely hard work, of course, to combine those two.
You know, it's unbelievable. Luckily, you're very smart. You can't say this about yourself, but I can say it about you. You're a person of great intellectual gifts, which enabled you to do several different types of things that
Yeah.
for many of us, any one of which would be like too hard, you know. But here you're doing
Yeah.
that and then combining it with theology. But before we go on too far, I want to comment something I just kind of felt I learned from the discussion about that, what created meaning, a meaningful ethos for a family or something of that sort. And you immediately thereafter said you looked at the list and it sounded as if you're looking for the one at which you would be at home.
Yeah.
Catholic one is not the one which you
No,
can be
exactly.
at home.
Yeah.
Or restricted. Other Protestants, you would not be at home there. But and I wonder if at homeness is a bit of a criterion for one's own spiritual journey. In other words, part of the question isn't just what is true in some sort of abstract sense, but where do I belong? You know, that's what is my story. Where is my story best lived out?
Yeah.
And
the Remonstrants, for example, they stimulated new members to write their own confession of faith.
Okay.
So it was a very interesting process because we were put together with maybe 6 or 8 people who were all preparing for to become members of that denomination. And we discussed all the things like, well, what is God for you, etc. And then, of course, in the circle, everybody thought about it differently. But that was what I was looking for at that moment. From what can I pick up from this tradition, which makes sense to me, basically? And is it enough to call myself a Christian or a liberal Christian, or maybe not? But at that moment, I thought, well, probably yes. So the process also ended with me getting baptized and confirming this self-written confession of faith, and then I was a member there. Yeah, and that process took 1 or 2 years or so. And at that moment, I also decided to study theology because I was so much interested in deepening this whole thing and making it more intellectual, and so that's what I did.
Yeah. At the same time that you're pursuing these degrees that actually would earn you a career, that probably paid a lot better than anything that comes out of the study of theology.
Yeah, that was of course a problem because I realized very soon that theology was really my thing. I loved it. To the second study, I loved it much more than the first one. But of course, the first one was earning me a salary.
Yes.
And the second one was very doubtful how it could pay me a salary, basically. So, so for first, I just pursued them both. And it took me 4 years for my PhD in physics. And at that time, it's also interesting to tell a bit how the theological training system in Holland works. If you want to be a minister in the Remonstrant Church or in other mainstream churches in Holland, you have to get a Master of Divinity degree. And on top of that, you have to get 2 years of denomination-specific training to become a minister. So my schedule was that I worked on this Master of Divinity degree, and in the meantime, also I visited the Remonstrant Seminary to discuss with other students, to discuss with the Remonstrant professor. Try to do a first sermon, write first sermon, get comments on it from the other students, read books about pastorate and that kind of stuff. So of course, this whole theological study, and especially this Remonstrance part of the study, was also stimulating the spiritual path. Because you were stimulated to think about a little bit of quite a bit about what you believe, so that was also very interesting.
Hans, in the course of that study, did you find yourself beginning to believe something quite different? Were there surprises along the way as you learned something? Oh no, what I previously thought now doesn't quite make sense? Or is it just more like a deepening or widening
Yeah, it
without?
was of course a new world because as I did not have any religious upbringing, and because I just did 1 year of church visit before I started my theology study, I was very blank basically,
So, okay.
and just eating everything I could eat there.
Okay,
basically.
so it's all possibilities are open in a sense.
Yeah. And it also reflected the studies because I did not follow the normal program, but the University of Utrecht had a Saturday program for people who changed careers, wanted to change careers basically. So Monday to Friday, I was sitting in the lab doing physics experiments, and Saturday I was taking theological lectures. And in the evening, I was preparing my exams, basically. So that was the way it worked. But it was all very new. But that also means it was the only part-time theological training in the Netherlands. So there was really a spectrum of students from very liberal to very orthodox. So some of those students were really sitting, going to the lectures in a black suit and praying before they could eat their cookie with the coffee, basically. And there were some others, among who I was one, who had a liberal and a very academic interest, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very hard work, but because I liked it so much, it was also giving me a lot of energy, and thus that made me successful in pursuing this dual track, basically. If I wouldn't have found it so enjoyable, this second study, I would never have made it for sure. So, yeah. So then after this 4 years, my PhD was finished. And I was not yet ready with my MDiv, especially the last year of my PhD. Of course, I had to do a lot of extra work in the preparing for my dissertation, so it slowed down also a bit. So I thought, what can I do? I don't want to remain a physicist. I do want to finish my MDiv. I may want to do something with it MDiv, but I don't know yet what. So what can I do now? And then what is stimulating and also buys me some extra time to finish my MDiv. So I did 2 postdocs actually in physics abroad, because I thought, well, living abroad is also a learning experience. So I went first to Germany and worked there for a year at the University of Tübingen, which was an interesting thing because, of course, the Theological University of Tübingen is very famous as well. So there again, I did my postdoc at the one part of the university, and then now and then went to a lecture in the Melanchthonschule in the center of Tübingen in Recht und Moral, which is a very interesting topic to hear about in Germany. This was more philosophical than religion, but at that time my master in theology was about ethics. So I was anyway interesting thing already at that moment in philosophy. So that was my first postdoc, and then my second postdoc was in the United States. I went to California and lived in a suburb of San Francisco to work at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab. From there, I did not do too much theology, but I came across Unitarian Universalism, and that really brought me home in a religious sense. My ministry training in the beginning at the Remonstrant Church was very interesting and very fruitful. But it was also because the professor at that time was very open to very critical questions. So I asked all the kind of things. Why are we a church? Why are we going to a Sunday service? Why do we believe in one God and not in two gods or whatever?
And these basic questions.
Yeah, because I didn't have a Christian upbringing, so all those questions did not have self-evident answers. But I asked the questions, and the professor would also was a very liberal professor, was very open to them and was fine discussing them with the other students and was stimulating. But then he retired, and then there was another professor, and the new professor was actually much more conservative in the sense that he saw the Remonstrant church more as an enlightened church in the 19th century way of being an enlightened church, a modernist, than that he was really eager into kind of looking for the boundaries of Christianity, basically.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't feel that much at home anymore in the Remonstrant Church. I still thought it was too confining for me. Yeah, and then I came across Unitarian Universalism in the United States, which is basically everything. You're sitting between a Buddhist in front of you, a Christian to the right, an atheist to the left, and a pagan behind you, and all are very happy with that.
And in America, you can be more than one of these at a time.
Yeah, and the Unitarian Universalists actually all are.
Yes,
and that, along with a very progressive attitude. For example, my first encounter with Unitarian Universalism was when I visited a conference in the United States. And I was there in Oregon, in Eugene. And I thought, well, I can visit the Unitarian Universalist Church. Why not? Let's see what it's all about. And it was in summertime, and they had basically ministers were on leave in the summer, so there was no minister there. And they organized it so that first a welcome of visitors, then there was a hymn. And then there was a discussion of 3/4 of an hour about whether America should be policeman in the world or not.
Okay.
And I thought, well, yes, this is my church.
Like a foreign policy symposium.
And so when I actually went to live in the United States, I already knew that I wanted to figure out what Unitarian Universalism was all about. So one of the first Sundays when we found our place to live in California, we went to the local church. I was together with my wife then, and we had a wonderful minister and a wonderful congregation. So it was really a homecoming. Had a great time. We've also visited the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly in Phoenix at that moment, and enjoyed it a lot. But it also meant that when after returning home, I knew that I could not be a Remonstrant anymore. I was just outgrown that, and that was difficult because I did not know what to do. I didn't want to stay a physicist because I didn't like the field. I knew I liked theology very much, but Unitarian Universalism was not existing in the Netherlands. And by the way, I had only an MDiv degree, not a PhD. So pursuing a career in theology was not really an option. I wanted to build a family with my wife. I went a third route, and that was I applied for the Boston Consulting Group, which is kind of a McKinsey-like firm. So business consulting. And so after returning to the Netherlands, I got a job there already when I was in the United States. So I went to home and I knew that there was this nice job for me. So I started to be a consultant. Now, that was quite a step because I was, of course, a very academic person. And
yes.
And this consultancy... that was quite new and a lot to learn, but also putting me in quite some stress because that was a very prestigious firm. So I had to make very high hurdles. And That did not go well. They had an up or out system, and after 1.5 years, it was out for me. But it was a nice firm. They put me in the back office to do some research, and they said, "Well, while doing research, you can apply for another job." So that was the plan. But what the result was that I liked the research in their back office so much and did it so well that in the end, they decided to ask me to stay there and do research. So I worked there for another 5 years or so, 6.5 years. And one corporate finance project after the other, working with students and working internationally with other research group within the firm. And at least what I found problematic in physics was that it was too narrow. I knew everything about superconducting X-ray detectors for astronomical satellites, and for the rest I knew nothing. And the nice thing about some consulting firm is you really get to know how business works, and business is quite a large part of the world actually. So I saw an energy firm from within, and as an insurance company from within, and all did analyze how finance worked for these various companies in these various industries. In industry, at that moment, also the internet startups were very prominent. So we analyzed those. Very broad, actually, even to I was a specialist in company valuation and shareholder value management. But I also did a project, what are the ethical implications of shareholder value management?
Good.
So it was from the scope, the broadness, it was a very interesting job. So I liked it a lot. But in the end, it was time for something else. And then it started to be, at that moment, then that's along that, of course, the spiritual path also went. So what I in the end ended up was calling the Unitarians in England. And I told them, well, I already have an MDiv degree. I want to be a spokesperson for the Unitarian or Unitarian Universalist movement. What should I do to be recognized as a minister by your denomination?
Mm-hmm.
Now I was welcomed very heartily. It was very appreciated, and they made a kind of distance learning program for me to get to know the denomination. I had to come over a number of times to United Kingdom to preach in various little chapels. I got a supervisor, which was nice because it was actually a couple. They were both ministers. He was American and she was Dutch. And they had been ministers for a long time in the United States, so they knew the Unitarian Universalist tradition. They also knew the Dutch situation, and they were lovely people. So they supervised me in this trek towards the ministry.
It strikes me one life lesson one could conclude from that part of your story, Hans, is reach out. You know, you don't know where to go next. Well, think who does know where to go next. And give them a call, even though they're in another country and you have no prior relationship, but you just contact them, and it turns out, they're delighted to hear from you.
And
it was happy to help to mentor you, I guess might be.
So, so in the end, in 2001 or so, I was recognized as a minister by them. And of course, I also met a lot of people, and had at least some. Although it was in the UK, I had a religious home.
Yes.
Although it was a small home, Unitarians in England are very small; they are just 5,000 people or so. But it was fun, and it was rich, and it was stimulating. So stimulating experience to get that recognition. Yeah, so and then, no, yeah, so I was still in business, and after getting recognition, I was starting basically to shape my ministry around guest services. So in Holland, you have the very fragmented liberal religion. So you have the Remonstrants, but you also have the liberal Mennonites, and you have the liberal wing of the Dutch Reformed Church, and you have at that moment NPB, which is closest to Unitarianism, I would say, but it is no church. It's more like a community which practices religion, but it is not a church in the conventional sense of being a church. So, yeah, I became a member of the last group, and I was taking services in all four, basically, mainly in the NPB, but also in the Liberal Dutch Reformed, and sometimes a Remonstrant. But so that was my ministry, and it was not a major part of my life, but it was an enjoyable part of my life. So I did that for several years. Yeah, and it felt like still urging. Like I did for many years, I did this finance with a lot of joy and happiness, and it was very interesting. But I didn't feel it was my call. My call was in the religion. That was where my major, which I enjoyed most. So I had to figure out, well, how can I do that? And then at a certain moment, I tried several jobs, and they did not work well for me. And I said, well, okay, now it's finished. I'm going to try the ministry. So I went for a temporary interim ministership in the Remonstrant Church, because it was the one which became free at that moment. And I liked it very much, but it didn't work because half of the congregation liked me very much, being a religious seeker, basically, and getting spirituality from all over the place in the tradition of my first professor at the seminary. And the other half of the congregation was being a liberal, an enlightened church, modernist church, 19th century based, who felt, yeah, this minister is just taking the essence of us away. We cannot live with it.
Yes.
So it was clashing. I created conflict, basically, with my presence. So it had to stop. And then it was basically, panic, because I knew I wanted to do something like that. But it just didn't work. So what to do?
Yes.
So it was a very difficult time. And in the end, I decided to go back to finance. Went to work for an insurance company, risk management, corporate finance again, value-based management. And it worked for another 6 years or so. But I still felt I have to do something else with my life. This is not. I still already also in a long time, already when I studied for the ministry in the Remonstrant Church, I realized that the theology which I was looking for was not existing. I was thinking, you had all kind of systematic theologies about Christian God, about Christ, about all the Christian things, and of course there were also a lot of liberal things, liberal views on that. But the question, what is religious liberalism itself, was not answered. And that was, for me, was the most interesting thing, because I wondered, what do I have in common with liberal Jews, liberal Buddhists, liberal humanists, all those liberals outside the churches? Can I describe that? Because that is, for me, closer to the essence than God, Christ, etc.
Yeah, here's where your spiritual life and your intellectual life remarkably converge.
Yeah.
For you, this is the spiritual core.
This is the spiritual
what's expressed by liberalism.
Absolutely.
And you find it beyond Christianity, and all these pops up in all these other places. And yet It hasn't been thought through because that's not the intellectual project of the Christian liberal or the Buddhist liberal
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
whatever liberal.
Which I found strange already at that time. Why didn't people think about that? Because there are so many liberals. Why don't they wonder what liberalism is and what they have in common? But it was not there. So at a certain moment, I thought, well, I'm going to write it myself. So that must
Good idea.
been 12 or 15 years ago. I started to think about the book. I thought about a lot of things. But yeah, I had a problem because I didn't have a PhD. And I was not taught how to do theological research.
Right.
I had a couple of good ideas, but I could not. I was not used to use literature critically, etc., etc. So, well, there was a little book appearing, and it was interesting. I may have given it to you. It is a colored thing, which is said it's all about your search, not about our life anchor or something like that. Was it called?
Uh-huh.
And it was a kind of guide for, and it was an essay, a small book, little booklet, which was targeted at liberal congregations to show them what would it mean if you leave away the enlightened anchor, but put the search of the individual in your congregation central. Mm-hmm. What does it mean? What kind of congregation would you get? And there was, of course, a lot of Unitarian Universalism in that, and I did it together with another minister, a Remonstrant minister, who liked it very much. And so I wrote a little booklet, but still, it was a kind of a practical theology, how to be a liberal denomination, very liberal. But it was not a systematic study. After that, I did a couple of years business again, so finance, etc. But it still urged me, I have to make a real theology, a systematic theology of liberalism. Now and then I was at the insurance company. It was not going very well because I liked it not anymore, and I felt I had to do something different, and had to pursue my call, basically, because it felt like a call. I have to write something. So, and then my father started to suffer from dementia.
Oh.
So that was about 9 years ago or so, I think now. And he was needing a lot of informal care, and he moved to an elderly home, and it was close to me. So I went there. I have one brother, but he's living in Thailand, so he could not take care of my father. And my father had relatively was well to do, so he had quite some money. And I decided, well, we can have it both ways. I can stop my financial career, take care of my father, visiting him very regularly, helping out, make sure that he has a couple of nice last years. And in the meantime, pursue a second PhD. With exactly the topic I want to do, write a theology of religious liberalism, basically. So that was what I did, and I found the first supervisor was Chris Doude van Troostwijk. He was a professor at the Liberal Mennonite Seminary, but living in France. And I found Dan McKennon. Dan McKennon, you met him. He is the person taking care of Unitarian Universalist minister students at Harvard. He was my second supervisor, and later on, Marianne Mooijaert joined in the supervising team from first Amsterdam, later Leuven. And I went for a dissertation at the VU, the Free University. And it was just lovely. I was last. I was at home. I did the work I wanted to do, and with the working on the questions I pondered my whole life, basically.
Yes.
So it was super exciting. Although still, it was difficult to find colleagues who thought more or less in the same way as I did, because all people I met were, well, not then, but all the others were basically liberal, maybe liberal or maybe less liberal Christian theologians. And of course, now and then I read another book, but all were within the denominations. And I said to Chris, yeah, but that is not what I want. It's across across the denominations. So what do we all share? So we discussed, and in the end, Chris said, why are you not shifting from trying to write a theology of liberalism to a theology of religious seeking?
Of religious seeking.
Yeah, of religious seeking. No, yeah.
Yes,
that's. And I said yes to this. Yeah, you know, because you read the book.
Well, yeah, this is where I start becoming aware of your story. But yeah. How is liberalism and religious seeking? It's not obvious that one could transpose into the other.
Yeah. I was halfway my dissertation, basically describing in positive terms what religious liberals were believing. And that was all the basically the first 5 or 6 chapters of my dissertation. That was the original plan. That's the theology of religious liberalism.
Yes.
It is about being non-dogmatic. It's about putting ethics first and religious contents after that. It is about spiritual growth. What is it? If you not confess to a specific tradition, but if you are a liberal, what is in the liberal sense spiritual growth? All those questions were basically the first 5-6 chapters of my dissertation, and then Chris came. Yeah, but can you write about religious seekers? So then I had to think, okay, I believe that religious seekers, that to be a religious seeker, you have to be liberal. But if you are a liberal, you're not necessarily a religious seeker, because you also can be a liberal Jew or a liberal Buddhist or a liberal Christian. But what I'm describing here is what all liberals have in common. Also, all these people outside the churches. So what extra step could I make from just all the religious liberals to all the religious seekers, which I see all over the place among the spiritual but not religious, Unitarian Universalists, the Baha'i, etc., etc.
Well, I have myself tended to divide people, provisionally, you might say, into religious seekers and religious finders. Religious finders being found alone. But it's always seemed to me that the best finders remain seekers. Your understanding is not final. And the best seekers have actually already found something. They're more like following the breadcrumbs, that lead you down a path. They're not starting with nothing.
But this discussion, of course, was also if you go for a dissertation either in systematic theology or in philosophy, it's not different. You have to find a discussion partner, basically, and a kind of thinker which you think, well, this is a very useful starting point. I do not agree with everything he or she says, but 90% is very stimulating, and the 10% I'm going to criticize, and I'm making an extra step.
Yes.
And basically, for me, that person was Gordon Kaufman. And by accident, he was a Mennonite, which was really an accident, because Chris could have shown him to me, but I found it out myself. And Dan as well, because he was a colleague of Dan at Harvard. But I found him myself, and he was exactly doing that. He was a constructive theologian. So God is not something to discover, but God is something to be constructed. And that is exactly what I wanted to do theologically. I wanted to construct a theology of religious seekers, construct a theology of religious liberalism. I didn't want to discover it. It's hopeless anyway for religious seekers. But I wanted to construct something which makes sense. And Gordon Kaufman was very helpful, because he was the one who invented constructive theology. So he was all about, not about discovering, but about constructing something.
Yes, and he gave a kind of, you might call it a method that could be that he applied to the Christian context.
Yeah.
But it could be, well,
exactly.
applied beyond that. It could be,
absolutely,
it was beyond that.
And he actually said it himself. At a certain moment, he said, "Well, I have developed a method which I'm going to apply to my own Christian faith, but I challenge people from other faiths to do the same, so that we can compare and discuss, etc., and enrich each other." Well, that's exactly what I want to do. But not from a liberal Christian point of view, but from a liberal or from a religious seeker perspective.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that is so. It was very helpful. He died. I never met him, but his work was very stimulating. I really had a good discussion partner, and I could really use his method to adjust it and achieve exactly what I wanted to do anyway already for a long time. So, yeah.
And as you just mentioned a moment ago, in this category of seekers, prominently includes in our time people who call themselves spiritual but not religious.
Yeah.
Because they are rejecting the confines.
Yeah.
The latter term implies.
Yeah.
And spiritual kind of means they're open in your sense of liberal.
Yeah.
And they're open, and they're not just wandering around, they're seeking.
Yeah.
And as I understand a lot of your work since the time I've known you, you're trying to help the seekers. The seekers don't have a template, you might say, for how to think about these ultimate matters seriously.
Yeah.
And dialectically or logically or whatever you want to call it, methodically.
Yeah.
And how to get somewhere. They wander around, you might say, impressionistically often.
Yeah.
A little of this, a little of that. If they were at the beach near hot dogs.
I guess that it is because most of the theologians have a solid background in one tradition or another.
Yes.
And from that background, commit part of their life to do theology for their denomination. But of course, that was not existing because there was no SBNR denomination. Maybe Unitarian Universalism or Baha'i come close, but even then, still not. So that was also the reason why it's absent, because there was no organization, there was no established intellectual ownership, there was no guru or whatever.
Right.
It was the movement itself was basically working against creating a theology, which made it so long, because like you have in 1985 you had Robert Bella. And he was a theologian who first invented the word Sheilaism. And Sheilaism, that was the kind of, in his taste, the kind of simple religion from stupid people who left the church and wanted to do their own little thing. And that was Sheila.
Sheila. I have a chapter in my book defending Sheila.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not sure he was a better religious person than she was.
Yeah.
but rather than mocking her, he might see, what can I learn from her?
Yeah. That is the people in Germany. They called it Bastelreligiösen.
Yes.
I don't know how your German is, but Bastelreligiösen means something like toddler spirituality or so. But you cannot.
But people like Sheila don't know how to think it through beyond her own very decent instincts.
Yeah, because there are no critical ministers or thinkers who challenge her, which is fine. Be in your own little thing, and of course there is a lot of wisdom there, but it's not that people systematically reflected on it. and which started to be very strange, given the fact that you had hundreds of millions of SBNRs in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You think, well, how can it be that such a movement with so many people is not seriously reflected upon?
Yes. But you're talking about the problem of the SBNRs, enormous number of people and growing, and yet no, as you put it, no gurus, no exemplars, no books, no nothing except a little of this and a little of that they might grab along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're an SBR who's really serious about seeking and understanding.
Yeah.
You need help.
Yeah.
And
If you might want to have help, you may not want to get help, but you may benefit from some help.
Well, if you want to think more deeply and consistently and so on. Nobody has to do that, but that's one of the joys of being a rational being. You try to understand things, not just spectate.
Yeah, I mean, intellectually, when I started with my dissertation, especially when I agreed with Chris, it would be about religious seekers. I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Yes,
but nobody, even Chris, hardly understood what I wanted to do. It was so strange to people that you wanted to do. So why are you not doing a tradition, reflecting on a tradition? Why this kind of fake thing or so? Or maybe it's not even possible because they don't want a theology, or they won't want a religion, or just stop pursuing this hopeless job, basically. Well, I was on the other hand. I said, well, I'm certain something will come out. It was in the Netherlands. Chris, he was very committed to liberal religion, so he and especially when I chose Kaufman, which was of course nice for him because he was at the Mennonite seminary, which it fitted him very well that I was investigating Kaufman. But Chris was mainly a continental philosopher. He was a theologian, but he wrote his dissertation in continental philosophy, which was totally not my style of doing, because I'm very much an analytical thinker. And also at the universities, well, in the group of Marianne, I had some discussions, but I hardly found any serious discussion partners about this topic in Europe at all. I really had to discover Theology Without Walls, basically, to find real colleagues.
And that's how I met you. I started the Theology Without Walls, which is not in spite of the name of A1 theology, it's really a theological inquiry.
Yeah.
A style of inquiry, a community of inquiry. But it's exactly the right umbrella for your Seekers project. From an intellectual point of view, I felt immediately at home. I thought, well, if it has to be somewhere, it has to be here. This is where my closest colleagues are. So I was very happy to discover your initiative. Yeah, and two of my close colleagues in Theology Without Walls, I think John Thetominal, Janine Diller, were like readers on your dissertation.
Mark Heim too. Yeah, that was great because
that's stellar talent.
They were my closest colleagues and
the best thinkers around.
Yeah, and also not just good thinkers, but also the closest thinkers.
Yes,
because people as close to my field in the Netherlands, you would just not having. They were not there.
Yes.
Not even in the whole of Europe, I would say. At least I did not discover them. A couple in Scandinavia a little bit, but not like Mark Heim or John or Janine. It was very good. Yeah.
Well, Europe is organized very differently in the religion categories. They don't have separation of church and state in the American style, but a consequence perhaps of that is you've got a Catholic faculty, a Lutheran faculty, a Muslim faculty.
No, it varies a lot between countries. They're like in Sweden or so, there is still not a strong separation between church and state, and in Germany as well. But in France, for example, it's very strong.
The
separated.
anti-clerical
and in the Netherlands,
tradition.
In Netherlands as well, like this whole system which I explained in the beginning of the podcast, where you have the state part of the training, which is the MDiv, and then the denomination part, which is the church linked part. So there is also a strong separation. So
it's a separation of church and state, but I guess what I'm noticing is the university curricula, programs of study, are religion denomination by denomination. There's not much room for just spreading. Could you do a Theology Without Walls program in your university?
No, I don't think so. I think, for example, Marianne Mooijaard, well, of course, everybody knows that she is a Roman Catholic, but it doesn't. It is not the case that she only attracts Roman Catholic people as students. No, not at all. It was never a problem that I was a religious seeker for her. So for the theological, for the church groups, like the Remonstrant Seminary, the Seminary of the Dutch Reformed Church, those are linked very strong to congregations, but the faculties are basically open to everybody, and everybody can feel welcome.
Okay, so
but nevertheless,
your project would qualify as a legitimate interest.
Yeah, but nevertheless, it is not the case that
even if it didn't have a denominational home.
Yeah,
in one of the
it doesn't bring forth really pluralist thinkers or so.
Yes.
It's also strange, and it's also I still preach 20 times a year or so in liberal congregations.
Yes,
and that's all. Most of the time they're very small groups, but I have led services. I've made of my dissertation. I made a popular book, so normal people can read without a theological or philosophical background. And I have led services where I explained them that I had published this little book, and that every 15 people were present bought the book. So the interest in the congregation
that was a great event.
On the local, there are lots of people interested on the popular level, but in the theological level, it's very difficult. And I would say in the United States, it's the other way around. I found your group. I found theologians very interested, but if you go to your Unitarian Universalist church and preach about the theology of religious seekers, well, at a certain moment they start to look on their watch and say, "Can you hurry up a bit because I have to demonstrate?" It's just, I don't know. I still do not really fully grasp why it works that way, but it's different in the United States and then in the Netherlands.
So you have found venues in which you can do what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And some of it is research and thinking and writing, of course.
Yeah.
And some of it is actually preaching.
Yeah.
And some of it is collegial discussion.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. And I mentioned, I'm now shifting to more philosophical research. Yes. And there it is different again. Because in philosophy, where in theology, I had the feeling that I was really on the margin of theology, that only TWW people basically understood why this was really relevant. And that all the Christian theologians, I was a bit strange or so, doing this kind of work. And in philosophy, I'm suddenly in the middle of the field. Because my research, which is on diversity, has epistemological aspects, it has ethical aspects, meta-philosophical aspects, and all these kind of things are linked to various people discussing things which are relevant. It's totally different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In theology, I had really trouble because there were no theologians constructing a theology for religious seekers. I had basically, for a method, to go to a liberal Christian theologian. So because there was not something closer to that. And now in philosophy, it's all over the place. It's middle. It's very strange.
Why isn't wisdom the business we're in, rather than maybe, you might say religion?
Yeah, maybe.
Why isn't the pursuit of wisdom, the love of wisdom, the business we're in?
Yeah, and it's not surprising. Of course, you are a philosopher. You ended up in a theology without walls. I'm a theologian, and now ending up in philosophy, and it's a fake boundary in a way.
It is a very different beginning, because the religion, it was unnatural to me. The place to do, I felt guided. Like you have a calling, I have my calling. Part of my calling was to start TWW, Theology Without Walls. The place to do it was the religious community of religious scholars. Yeah. But of course, they tend to be all niched and maybe in the pay of, paid ministers or theologians on religious college faculties. But it is
strange that you have
totally niched. No philosopher, even if he's a strong Kantian, is going to think, "Oh, I can't read Hegel." Or I got to leave Hegel out of it.
It is strange that you need a philosopher to enter the theological field to break that open.
Yes, but a lot of things are like that. In general, in modern life, where you experience this in physics, you get so specialized. You know a lot about a little. But these turfs are carefully guarded, and people hate it if someone from another field, the sociologist, is writing about history. Well, they don't know anything about history. Or vice versa. We get very edged and defensive. And these talk about walls. There are many walls. And walls between denominations are among them. But anyway, and you got to find which philosophers can be helpful, because a lot aren't. They're doing things completely irrelevant, you might say.
Yeah.
To your project, which is, you might say, the project. If you ask, what is the theological project of our times? I think part of it has to do with how do the different religions of the world understand one another. But beyond that, in an increasing secularization, how do we think adequately about the spiritual but not religious? And the growing category of people who answer none to the religious questionnaires.
But it is not just about religion. How do you think about other religions? It's also how do you think about other political
the whole
ethos or groups, or how do you think about other nationalities or other cultures or so? Yeah, and that is why I'm now. And if you broaden the question about religious diversity to a general question about how do you think and how do you act upon differences between people, then you're in the middle of philosophy, and that's where I'm now. So
So a spiritual story isn't just where you came from and what you've been through, but it's also life has a dynamism, a trajectory, and it sounds as if this is where you're going now. And you've talked about the many kinds of diversity. And you just mentioned a half dozen or so, because we're divided we're different people. We're different towns, communities, nations, religions, regions, interest groups, social classes, economic interests, et cetera, et cetera. It's all diversity. You have to get along with people who are diverse and understand
and I'm
them.
convinced
not just get along, but come to something richer. Right.
And I'm convinced that a lot of problems in this world are caused by the fact that people do not deal with the differences with other people in a proper way.
Yes.
And that is in religion, it is the case. It is in politics, it's the case. It's in ethics, different people living together. It's always the same. How do you act properly on other people being different? And that's such a challenge. I like that.
I don't know if you've gotten to the point yet, Hans, but it'd be useful if you have, and might be a good point to conclude on, if you were to give, like 1, 2, 3 what are the simple rules or guidelines for dealing with people very different from oneself?
Yeah, so that it starts with listening. That'll and don't use truth as an argument, and be very keen on power and thinking instead of moral thinking, and that kind of principles. Cherish diversity, not just tolerate it, but cherish it. Those are just 4 of them. But or choose moderate leaders, bridge builders, instead of people with a clear vision. Because the bridge builders are the heroes of this society.
Okay,
that was also one.
Okay, that's interesting. But cherish the differences. Well, thank you, Hans, for a very interesting discussion. What a journey with a calling and in pursuit of an understanding that is both spiritual and intellectual, and with an upshot, moreover, so far, and there will be more in the future, but a published book, which I'm most aware of because it was in the Theology Without Walls series.
Yeah.
But there will be more to come from Hans.
I hope so. I'm working on it. Yes. And you will definitely hear it.
Okay. Well, you be well.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to God and Autobiography, the podcast. Subscribe for free today wherever you listen to your podcasts and hear a new episode every week. You can hear the complete dramatic adaptation of God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher by Jerry L. Martin by beginning with episode 1 of our podcast and listening through its conclusion with episode 44. You can read the original true story in the book from which this podcast is adapted, God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher, available now at Amazon.com and always at godandautobiography.com. Pick up your own copy today. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, please email us at questions@godandautobiography.com and experience the world from God's perspective, as it was told to a philosopher. This is Scott Langdon. I'll see you next time.